Before I begin with the next script read, I feel I need to add a disclosure. The following script by Gibson will be very horrific to some viewers. It contains blood, gore, dismemberment, amongst other horrific things I forgot to mention. Note to the author Gibson, your mind is sick and twisted. I feel you have a similar mind to James Wan and Lee Wanell. They are the minds behind the Saw franchise, and I can't forget Eli Roth. He is the mind behind the Hostel franchise. I like it. Anyway, that being said, if you have a weak stomach, please do not continue. At the very height of the COVID pandemic, Roger has been in lockdown now for 7 long, grueling days in quarantine facility in central Auckland, close to the Sky Tower. It's driving him insane. He still has another week to go, and he doesn't think he'll last that long, being stuck in this stinky, pokey room with a single bed in the corner, a side table, an empty, dusty shelf, and a painting glued to the wall, an ugly rendition of the Auckland Harbour Bridge. The bathroom is the size of a closet, with a false mirror affixed to the wall. There isn't even a window. There are no electrical sockets, TV, or Wi-Fi in the room. He feels as if he's in a prison cell. They took his cell phone off him when he arrived. And though they laxly searched him for drugs, alcohol, and weapons, they didn't find the caber knife inside his hidden compartment of his backpack. Its handle is gold in a black leather sheath. He knows he probably should have dumped it. He took a major risk, but he kept it in case a golden opportunity were to arise. Plus, it's his favourite, and he carries it everywhere he goes. He bought it when he was overseas on R&R in Afghanistan. He's counting down the days until he's released, so he can continue where he left off, satisfying his needs and desires. Roger wasn't permitted to collect any clothes or supplies when they nabbed him at the COVID checkpoint. They brought him here in a paddy wagon with a couple of other people. Upon arrival in the quarantine facility, they handed him a care pack. In it, a cake of soap, shampoo and conditioner in little hotel-sized bottles, a toothbrush, toothpaste, a couple of shirts, hoodie tops, sweatpants, a packet of briefs, and socks. It's a blessing and a curse that they let him keep his watch, as it's the only way for Roger to track the passage of time. Roger is crawling along the floor on his hands and knees, in desperate state, as claustrophobia sets in. He reaches beneath the mattress for his knife, clasps it by the handle. An intense feeling of desire shoots through his veins. He can't hold it for any longer. The need, the lust, the thirst is too great to ignore or suppress. He takes it with him to the bathroom, flicks on the bright fluorescent light. He peruses himself in the mirror. The surface distorts his features. He looks like crap. His face, as it ripples on the face of the artificial mirror, makes him appear cracked and hideous. He salivates, thinking about cutting through flesh and bone. He misses the feelings it evokes. The voice inside his head, it's so loud and commanding. He's trembling. Sickness churns inside his gut when he comprehends that there is no alternative. He has to do it. He can't go out and hunt because he's locked in 24/7 to stop the spread of the coronavirus. 3 times a day, 2 people come to the room to deliver food through a crack in the door, dressed in PPE gear. They shove in a fresh flannel and a towel once a day, but they don't bother taking the dirty ones away. He knows they are not good targets. He can't get his hands on any of them. They're untouchable. Safety in numbers, and they're armed with tasers. He noticed all of this the first day he was here. If he had his arsenal with him, he'd have no problem obliterating them one by one. He did it when he was in the army, when they seconded him and his team into a special unit. He didn't even flinch when it comes to annihilating the enemy. If any civilians got in the way, they too met their maker. He's lethal with a knife and an expert when it comes to killing. It makes him the perfect serial killer. Roger smashes his head against the mirror, trying to dislodge the overpowering pulses, and he doesn't stop until the room starts to sway. He wipes the blood from his face with the back of his hand. Instant, gratifying relief has him wanting more. So, he makes a decision and commits. Placing his hands on the rim of the sink, he severs off a pinky finger from his left hand. With a wet, mushy sound, it drops into the sink. His heart skips a beat. Then, Excruciating pain blasts throughout his core like a grenade, rendering him momentarily immobile. In that moment, something within him snaps. It brings him to life. His breath erupts. An unbound awareness grips him. He'd never thought in a million years that hurting himself would bring such unbridled pleasure. He drops to the floor, unconscious. When he comes to, bloody handprints mark the sink, and his hand feels like it's on fire or been run over by a freight train. He moans, but doesn't scream. Over the next hour, all 5 digits are completely removed from his hand. He wraps the stump in a towel. It's filthy, wet, and it stinks. Roger drags himself across the floor, onto the bed, wanting nothing more than to sleep. But it's useless. He's too hyped up on adrenaline. Thoughts a ruminating mess. Too many emotions to grapple with. This new compulsion devours all of his thoughts. He needs more. Slowly, rising to his feet, his head spinning, the room tilting, red streaks cover nearly every surface. He tries to calm his breath. Metal and salt permeate the air. He licks his lips. He's always loved that scent. If he could, he would bottle it and turn it into a cologne. A knock on the door makes him jump out of his skin. The door opens. Food wrap in a paper bag is pushed through the crack. The door slams shut. It's so loud it rattles his teeth. Every sensation is intensely heightened. He's never felt more alive in his entire life. He bolts to the loo and throws up. The intensity of the situation drives his fortitude. His mangled hand fascinates him to no end. He's thrilled to discover how much more appealing his own blood looks compared to that of his numerous victims. This motivates him to carry on. He regains his strength and slowly he severs his left arm from the elbow down, leaving a bloody mash of bone and matter. He passes out again. When he drifts back to reality, flat on his back with a cable laying on his chest, in his right hand he clutches the globby mess of his detached left arm. A scream finally explodes, but he smothers it by putting his dismembered arm into his mouth. He clamps down as hard as he can with his teeth. The taste of his own flesh stirs something dark and evil within him. His screams morph into diabolical laughter of pure absurdity, and tears of insufferable agony pour down the side of his face. His face, his bulbous alcoholic nose. In a clouded haze, he takes a knife and he expertly cuts through the bridge. All the flesh, gore, bits of bone fall into the sink, along with his other severed body parts. In the gore-splattered mirror, the hole in the middle of his face makes him smile. Spread across the floor, bodily fluids make it slippery. He stumbles and cracks his head on the edge of the toilet. When he eventually wakes, his enormous sense of achievement is short-lived. He needs more. He's not quite satisfied yet. Looking down at himself, he's repulsed at the sight of his wrecked body. There are other parts that need to go. He just doesn't look quite right. Something inside his head is broken. He ignores it all to continue on with the mission, satiating his need to mutilate and destroy. A sadistic urge is pulsating through his body, and though the suffering is all-consuming, it's not enough for him to stop. With the knife, he continues. Even when it becomes blunt, he carries on, regardless. When the breakfast crew arrive the following morning, the vile stench emanating from the room stops them in their tracks. They call the authorities. The first cop that enters begins to throw up his breakfast of eggs and bacon. The second cop is enthralled by what he sees. He freezes, horrified, yet intrigued. One of the paramedics faints, though her partner catches her before she hits the deck, right into a puddle of something that shouldn't be outside the human body. They try to avoid the unmentionable globby bits and pieces, indistinguishable to the untrained eye. On the bed, it's the most horrendous scene, one to give them all nightmares for the years to come. Roger is now a torso, with a nearly decapitated head, and his right arm is clutching the caber knife. If that is not grueling enough, he's missing his eyes, nose, lips, and his only remaining features are two bulging, bloodshot blue eyes.